and the keeping of and preservation of those lex principles um, as valid and de jure guidance for human government order or structure makeup for government. And government, therefore, excuse me, government, therefore, is structured on these ancient divine principles and are put in place in a structured manner or written constructed format or oral traditions and customs for the preservations of divine rights that exist by divine nature with humanity and in their nature are not what you call an ens legis construct, but are actually based on the principles of the studies of nature and then put into written form to formulate the makeup or the construct of government principles. Therefore, again, when we look at what would be called de jure or legitimate government, we will always look at the principles of lex in order to see or to recognize whether or not those who are operating such government are in harmony with nature's God and nature's law, i.e., therefore lex injures or the law injures no one. And this is why when you study ancient African Asiatic culture, you will see the cosmological origins or natures or phrases that always have to do with the ephemerides construct of the nature of the heavens or star structure. Just like you'll look at metrology being used for the construction or the layout of cities, of pathways on the earth, of the ley lines on the earth, or where our ancient mothers and fathers built mounds, why they did, at what are also known as nova points or points of high energy. Also, where ancient temples were built, why they were built at certain places according to metrology or the laws of nature. And so you will look at the abstract the nature of why certain concrete things were done with what you will refer to as the spiritual or the unseen or the breath aspect of construct. And so when you're looking at uh, African Asiatic culture and the principles of jurisprudence, always look for the feminine, masculine principles that are rooted in everything, in the language, in the names of lands, etc. One example that you may look at before our Moorish mothers and fathers were defeated, when you're looking at Al-Andalus, which after the defeat of our mothers and fathers, um, the Moors who ruled after our defeat, Al-Andalusia was named Spain. And so when you look at Spain, you look at Andalus and Al-Andalusia. So you have a masculine and a feminine name. And a lot of times when you're looking at history and jurisprudence, it is important for you to remember the duality of the nature of both the linguistic forms and the names of lands, etc., and the nature of things in harmony with nature so as to reduce the confusion when you're doing research or analytical studies on the culture. And very often, because after the hybrid Romans took over, and you look at this area um, after or during the area of what is known as the Napoleonic Wars, when the hybrid Europeans start taking over the original Aboriginal Phoenicians operations or homeland that you call Iberia or the Iberian Peninsula, which is now known as Europe. Why and how they corrupted the culture and uh, constructively reduced or removed the feminine aspects of both law, the construct of government, how government is properly run in harmony with nature, um, the real meaning as to why the land in vexillum, or flags or standards, why they're not spoken of in their feminine aspect, etc., which is the origin or the construct of the womb or the Ankh system, and why that means government, and why that harmonizes with government or the constitution or the makeup, or even when you're dealing with the silica salts, etc., that construct the body, and how and why. And this is would be the system or the Ankh, which is a symbol of the womb, and this would be the uterus, the left and the right fallopian tubes, and the birth canal, and this would be your first holy cross. And keep in mind that holy means the sun. All right, so Halig is Sanskrit, which means the sun. And so, because the offspring of the womb, etc., or the mother, and she produces herself, which is the feminine egg, and then she converts the feminine egg within the womb and gives birth to sons. And this is where, from this principle, the metaphor is mother and son, or ma son study, or masonry, which is the cosmo operation of this in government, cosmology, and thus metrology, and thus how buildings are constructed on the earth in line with the layout of the stars, i.e., metrology. Thus, the constitution of city constructs and nation constructs on earth in harmony with nature is designed to harm no one. Therefore, lex namini injurium. The law injures no one. It's in harmony with nature. So that we can aid ourselves in getting back to the principles of our ancient mothers and fathers, because we have a lot of things to fix at Midgard. Why I just took this little excerpt from the supraliminal and actually did some bullet points on that to present what we're talking about tonight. And this is also because a lot of the demonology or dark side magic that has been adopted from ancient Babylonia, i.e., the dark side of things, has been ruling Midgard for so many centuries. It has caused so much havoc on the planet Earth, and the people are looking for light, or looking for remedy, or looking to construct an order of government, or go back to the principles in order to fix things. And they're running into a lot of opposition. And as Dr. Naila was mentioning earlier, truth is under attack all across this planet, and people need to know why, etc. And so, but they also need to have a knowledge of origin of things, so they themselves can take responsibility and get into the order of operations, or the order of the day, to the true nativity of the people of Earth, both the nativity of the body and the nativity of the Constitution principles of law, lex, in the nature of nature, so that they're not confused with the ens legis operations of quote unquote color of law, and have a foundation to look at, so that they can separate the wheat from the chaff, or the real from the fake, or the prima facie from the de jure, the de facto from the de jure. And that's again why we took this little excerpt from the MST of A degrees to share with you. And this is derived, that little section is derived from the supraliminal, that's lesson book number 12, which you haven't seen. To share with you tonight, because we're in this process all across the planet, and you'll see more and more people becoming what they would generally use as awake or reawakening. And it's actually a workings of nature, a divine workings of nature that's really taking place on the planet, so that we can catch up with what's going on. And those who are still a little sleepy, a lot of work that's taking place across the planet with all of humanity of trying to help in the great missionary work of uplifting fallen humanity, that you might have some sense of rational guidelines by which you can throw off the BS and start getting some work done. The other thing that I was talking to Dr. Naila, or most of you all know Dr. Naila is Dr. G. And a lot of you through the weeks and through this last couple of years have been dealing with or following her. A lot of times when she's traveling, she'll have casual conversations with you and share a lot of her insight. Most of you who know her know that she's a poetess. And when you read some of her poetry, you can kind of sense that she's a really a deep thinker, but she's like one of those kind of deep thinkers that thinks naturally deep. It's not like, like some people, they seek to analyze things or look at things deeply, and they work at it. Well, she doesn't work at it. She just does it naturally. And many of you who've had the opportunity to ride with Dr. G, and when you're looking at the official office hours of Dr. G, and you pick through some of the philosophical statements that she makes, you'll really begin to recognize actually some of those ancient Sabi principles, etc. That's actually been a part of her life. And as she's grown in her cognizance, you will see that she's going deeper into the philosophies with the comprehension of their true metaphorical meanings, etc. And one of the things that you recognize taking place on the planet, almost all of us are going through that process of reawakening. And so again, we share that with you. And as I was talking to her earlier, because a lot of times when you present some of these fundamental, because these are really fundamental principles, any scholars who do any research in any of the disciplines of civilization on Earth find this stuff. This is not complex stuff. This is easily findable. I mean, this is findable. This is not deep research. These are basic principles that any scholar finds anyway. And people with PhDs and adeptus degrees in all societies, because all of your philosophical societies on the planet and your governmental societies have what are known as quote unquote adept chambers or adept orders, etc. And adept simply means those who are experts in the philosophies, etc. And this is common all over the world. So don't look at it this as, oh, this adept chamber only belongs to this organization or that organization. It belongs to all the philosophical organizations at Midgard. Whether they're using it positively or negatively, they know the rules. So let's get over that. For those who always make excuses about the people with all these grand titles and all these lettered titles who when pressured with the revelations of truth, pretend that they don't know these things or that they never heard of them. Or, whoa, I didn't know that we were messing over you. Yes, they did. Yes, they did. The problem that you have today is that the truth is becoming known to the common people as the metaphorical or the anthropological Jesus or Yeshua presented, where he took the truth to the common people after he went to the Sadducees and etc., the Pharisees, etc., who were corrupting everything. And that's really what's ruling today. Though those would be known today as the members, the Roman Curia members, and particularly those of the crown, quote unquote, which are known also as the Circle Church and Chancery, which is also known as British Accredited Registry, which are also known as your lawyers and your attorneys, which are also rejected in the constitutional makeup of the order of modern government, and why they don't teach what you would call the supremacy clause in the adopted constitution for contemporary operations of government, etc. Whereas they cannot hold lawful office in a constitutional government, which is also why you're having the problems that you're having today with the corruptions and the wars against the people under the operations of people who you thought were your government, thought was your government, who are really your enemies, who've been ruling over you. And a lot of the corruption and the miseries that humanity is suffering today has operative origin with those persons, etc. And so again, we share with you a little bit of that. Now, and as I was saying earlier, I was talking to Dr. G and Brother Wayne earlier about a lesson, and this is one of the exposés of the conquest intent at North America from colonial U.S. democracy. And this is actually, and many of you scholars and teachers and principals of schools, etc., know this, but they don't usually show this to the people, particularly since most of them operate under the Rockefeller institutions, etc., whose missionary work has been to overthrow the fundamental principles of jurisprudence in relationship to constitutional enforcement and its ancient origin of Sabi or Saba, and implying that it is from the devil or that it injures humanity when actually it's the foundation of civilization, etc. And so this is actually sharing with you some of the questions of a completed 8th grade. Understand, we're not talking about high school. We're not talking about college. We're not talking about university. We're talking about 8th grade. And this is from the 1800s. And we'll share a little bit of that with you. Dr. Nayola, you was asking me a question earlier.
No, I just have a thought with regard when you just said an interjection. When you mentioned whose missionary work is XYZ. Historically or traditionally, we have been given the false, I guess,
or misdirected.
We've been misdirected to think that anything that was a missionary was a doer of good.
Yes.
But even though the prophet said, help me in my missionary work.
My great missionary
work. But there are missionaries of doom and death and all of those other things, just as there are so allegedly, people who are going out. As a matter of fact, most of who we thought down through the ages were missionaries of help were actually going into traffic.
They was missionaries of demonology.
There you go.
And this does not exclude others, so let's not get that. But most specifically, the great political platform for the missionary work of din and doom is known as the Democratic Party of the Kaiklos, or the KKK, etc., that's operating in the Western Hemisphere. Although what their counterpart, which is really not their counterpart in the modern world, known as the Republican Party, together are two sides of the same coin of operatives who have been spearheading, from an enforcement perspective, the military forces of Rome to conquer the world under unum sanctum and the doctrine of discovery, while pretending to be a legitimate government, particularly since 1861, which most of you already know. And again, as we were talking earlier, to demonstrate to you how many people who have been subjected to the operations of John D. Rockefeller and Frederick T. Gates in their psychic attack construct known as the General Education Board to maintain the operations of the dark, etc., under the guise of good, which is why most of you who already know particularly those who care about the children, because a lot of people say that, but well, you can take that with a grain of salt. Who send their children to the operatives of Rome under the guise of education, will send them to the operative Roman Curia, Circle Church and Chancery, members of the Rockefeller Foundation, known as the General Education Board, established in 1902, for the purpose of dumbing down humanity under the guise of uplifting humanities. Keep that in mind. However, just to give you support or a comparative example for study, to just demonstrate how even your so-called college grads, many of them would fail this test, which was given to 8th graders in 1800s, etc., as an example, because people always, many, not always, but many people, when presented with these fundamental principles, will say, oh man, that's that Moorish stuff, as opposed to recognizing that this is just simply a research of facts of the human walk on the planet of the earth and is available to anyone. Here we go, 8th grade test questions. Now, the following we're going to share with you just to give you some examples and food for thought. And for many of you who are teachers and instructors and motivational instructors, this would give you something to work with to encourage people to take responsibility of themselves and of their seed or offspring, and take them out of the hands of Rome, who they've had faith in for quite some time, to their own injury. And this will be an example. This is transcript, word for word, of an 8th grade school test final exam. And this, for those of you who are researchers, many of you who are teachers and instructors know of this, but for those who don't, we're sharing it with you today. And this is from Salina, Kansas in 1895. And these are questions, and the questions would be presented in grammar with time presented as 1 hour, arithmetic with time presented as 1.25 hour, of United States history, 45 minutes, orthography, 1 hour, geography, 1 hour, and health, 45 minutes, as an example. Keep in mind, this is 8th grade. So I'm going to present to you the questions that are in this test for 8th graders in 1895 to show you the damage that has been done to the people of the land since 1902 with the Rockefeller and Gates Foundation operations under the guise of uplifting people, i.e., with their establishment of the mind control system and corruption of law via the General Education Board. Questions, 8th grade final exam, Salina, Kansas, 1895. Grammar, number 1. Give 9 rules for the use of capital letters. Number 2. Name the parts of speech and define those that have no modifications. Number 3. Define verse, stanza, and paragraph. Number 4. What are the principal parts of a verb? Give principal parts of do, lie, lay, and run. Number 5. Define case. Illustrate each case. Number 6. What is punctuation? Give rules for principal marks of punctuation. Number 7 to 10. Write a composition of about 150 words and show therein that you understand the principal use of the rules of grammar. That is in grammar. Then arithmetic. Time 1.25 hours. 1. Name and define the fundamental rules of arithmetic. 2. A wagon box is 2 foot deep, 10 foot long, 3 foot wide. How many bushels of wheat will it hold? Number 3. If a load of wheat weighs 3,942 pounds, what is its worth at 50 cents per bushel, deducting 1,050 pounds for tare? That's T-A-R-E, tare. Number 4. District number 3 has a valuation of $35,000. What is the necessary levy to carry on a school 7 months at $50 per month and have 104 for its incidentals? Number 5. Find cost of 6,720 pounds of coal at $6 per ton. Number 6. Find the interest of $512.60 for 8 months and 18 days at 7%. 7. What is the cost of 40 boards 12 inches wide and 16 foot long at $20, 20 cents per inch? 8. Find bank discount of $300 for 90 days with no grace at 10%. Number 9. What is the cost of a square farm at $15 per acre? The distance around which is 640 rods. Number 10. Write a bank check, a promissory note, and a receipt. That comes under arithmetic. Under the United States history, which is 45 minutes. 1. Give the epochs into which United States history is divided. 2. Give an account of the discovery of America by Columbus. 3. Relate the causes and results of the Revolutionary War. 4. Show the territorial growth of the United States. 5. Tell what you can of the history of Kansas. 6. Describe 3 of the most prominent battles of the rebellion. 7. Who were the following: Morse, Whitney, Fulton, Bell, Lincoln, Penn, and Howe. Number 8. Name events connected with the following dates: 1607, 1620, 1800, 1849, and 1865. That's history time. This is all 8th grade stuff. Keep that in mind. Orthography. Time, 1 hour. Number 1. What is meant by the following: alphabet, phonetic orthography, etymology, symbolication? 2. What are elementary sounds? How classified? 3. What are the following? And give examples of each: trigraph, subvocals, diphthong, cognate letters, linguals. 4. Give 4 substitutes for carrot. U in parentheses. 5. Give 2 rules for spelling words with finale. Name 2 exceptions under each rule. 6. Give 2 usages of silent letters in spelling. Illustrate each. 7. Define the following prefixes and use in connection with a word: by, dis, miss, pre, semi, post, non, inter, mono, and super. 8. Mark diagraphically and divide into syllables the following and name the sign that indicates the sound. Card, ball, mercy, sir, odd, sell, rise, blood, fair, last. 9. Use the following correctly in sentences. Cite, C-I-T-E, cite, S-I-T-E, cite, S-I-G-H-T, feign, F-A-N-E, feign, F-A-I-N, feign, F-E-I-G-N, vain, V-A-N-E, vain, V-A-I-N, vain, V-E-I-N, raise, R-A-Z-E, raise, R-A-I-S-E, and raise, R-A-Y-S. Number 10. Write 10 words frequently mispronounced and indicate pronunciation by use of diacritical marks and by symbolication. Symbolication, pardon me. Now that deals with orthology. Geography. Time, 1 hour. 1. What is climate? Upon what does climate depend? 2. How do you account for the extremes of climate in Kansas? 3. Of what are rivers? Of what use is the ocean? 4. Describe the mountains of NA. 5. Name and describe the following: Monrovia, Odessa, Denver, Manitoba, Hecla, Yukon, St. Helena, Juan Fernandez, Aspinwall, and Orinoco. Number 6, name and locate the principal trade centers in the United States. 7, name all the republics of Europe and give the capital of each. 8, why is the Atlantic coast colder than the Pacific in the same latitude? 9, describe the process by which the water of the ocean returns to the sources of rivers. 10, describe the movements of the earth and give inclination of the earth. That completes geography. Health. Time, 45 minutes. 1, where are the saliva, gastric juice, and bile secreted? What is the use of each in digestion? 2, how does nutrition reach the circulation? 3, what is the function of the liver? What is the function of the kidneys? Number 4, how would you stop the flow of blood from an artery in the case of laceration? Number 5, give some general directions that you think would be beneficial to preserve the human body in a state of health. Now that completes the health. Now this is a statement in relationship to this 8th grade test. Now imagine a college student who went to public school at the end of the 20th century trying to pass this 8th grade test. An 8th grade level of education is at least a minimal standard grade level so that the masses can comprehend fundamental reading, writing, and communication in general. And is this 8th grade test the level that set that standard? If so, why does the system reflect an apparent dumb down? Can North American students and professors alike get back up to the great 8th grade level of education dispensed in 1895? I just wanted to share that with you because Dr. Nail and myself, we were talking about this earlier. Because people or beating her up with a whole bunch of calls.
And while you were reading that, I've had up on the screen the online schooling for MoorishChildren.com link, because a lot of parents have been asking, is there a school where Moorish parents where I can have, get my children educated? This school has been going on for 6 years now.
Yes.
And I know you frequently are a guest.
Yes.
On their online school and
yes, with Secrets de Real.
And it goes from what age to what, from what grades to what, rather?
They deal with, soon as they start talking, they actually deal with them.
All
be honest with you.
12th.
Yes.
12th grade.
Yes.
So I had that running while you were talking, because it's interesting. I mean, 90% of what you said, I couldn't answer the questions right. Because, and I asked you earlier today, when did the John D. Rockefeller and Frederick T. Gates established their, which was after this. This was
actually. Now this is 1895.
In 1895, and
1895
student knew or was expected
this
to
was
know.
Basic. All of this was basic to 8th grade level. And there's an assumption with many of the people, like when we're presenting some of these facts over the years with people, and you'll see people often would make the statement, yeah, man, but it's the college stuff, and the real deal, that's 8th grade stuff. And just like we were talking earlier, because I know you had a couple of calls, which you can comment, because we're sharing with the people this experience of awakening,
right,
and reawakening too, and responsibility, truthfully, with some of the questions that were presented to you actually today. And it's not new in calls that were made to you. And just because of the conversation, I just simply went to an ordinary dictionary of words and brought up, more and blackamoor, it's a compound word, breaking it up. It's basic classification and the principle of classification of words, just to discuss how easy it is when people keep thinking that their Moorish pedigree or bloodline is a religion, when actually it's their pedigree. And also to dispel any assumption that scholars don't know this or that other people don't know this, etc. So I went actually to dictionary of words, just basic words, and it actually gives you a lot of information in just 2 lines. And then we did an analysis on that, which is orthology, which is basic stuff that you learn in elementary school. Not today, but in the rule of basic etymology or basic grammar principles, a child would know in the 8th grade in 1800s. And people today assume that they're more educated because they're not aware of fundamentals which have been held back from them, in fact, etc. And so when you're talking about lex or the law, they think that the law doesn't belong to them. They think that the law belongs to the members of the Bar Association of the British Accredited Registry in England that have a branch operating at North America unconstitutionally, as a standard of operations for the execution of due process, when in fact they've been actually operating to the contrary, and actually their missionary work has been to overthrow the republic and not really support the republic, i.e. their major missionary work politically has been to overthrow and violate constitutional principles, not uphold them. And therefore, the members of the British Accredited Registry have been operating here, actually overthrowing the rights of the people and not really presenting or representing the rights of the people. And when that is said, a lot of times the people will get defensive and make ignorant statements that you're against them governing you, when actually, if the people would study even 8th grade level of education, they would recognize that these people are really enemies of the state of order and not actually supporters of constitutional principles, but to the contrary, have actually been overthrowing and subverting the rights of the people, and actually been enemies of the law and not supporters of the law. But because they have been enemies of the law, the people think that the law is really hurting them, when actually these people have been operating a color of law a color of authority and a color of office, and getting people to actually reject the law and actually think that the law is separate from their history and chronology, when actually they're harmonic partnerships. It's another reason why we're sharing this lesson tonight. And that 8th grade test is a documented testimony of the dumb down of the people. And sometimes you have to give people, you can't, you can tell the people the truth about some things and they won't accept it. So I just use this as an example to show them that truth. And then encourage them to take responsibility, because we all have our work to do in helping to uplift fallen humanity. And when you, this as an example, you can understand statements made by people who have been helping or been working hard to redeem the people from mental servitude, mental slavery. Just as Noble Drawley said, I came to redeem you from mental slavery, which you have now. When you understand history, chronology, and lex and jurisprudence, then you can understand why certain statements that he made were made. And you'll also understand why the Moorish Holy Temple of Science was founded as a civic organization to teach civilization principles.
So when you used to hear back in the 1800s or so, when somebody said he only had an 8th grade education.
Yeah,
they actually had far more than
you're getting in college now.
Getting in college now.
Now, yes. And this is a demonstration of it. And see, so the example, should encourage people to take serious the reason why this, and what you all see here is only a small it's a small example of what's over here, what's down there, what's downstairs, what's in boxes in the basement, and what you gave away.
Gotta learn.
And it's basic. And then you understand from the motivational point of view, from a negative political dark side democracy principle, why the hybrid Europeans instituted Index Librorum Prohibitorum and Index Librorum Expurgatorius, which is commonly known as the Great Christian Book Burnings. But don't blame that on Christianity, because these people aren't Christians. They've been hiding behind the word Christianity. But they're really Constantinians, operating the Niceno-Constantinopolitan Creed operations of the hybrid Romans that actually took over ancient Roma, etc., since the Napoleonic Wars, and have been corrupting Asiatic African history on the planet ever since.
There are so many comments here in the comments of those who have gone to college or whatever, and they're saying like, I feel stupid, or I didn't get this in college, or I wasted my time. And it's amazing how they deliberately decided, and it's in their whatever their mission statement is, that we're going to dumb them down.
Yes. As a matter of fact, and this is also now again, Dr. Naila, present again Grand Sheikh's Daria's school just for a minute.
You put the banner up?
For to help the people. Yes, please put that up.
Okay.
And for those of you who are seeking some remedy, here is a very, very, very erudite mother and empress who've been working for the nation for decades, and one of the primary people who was one of my teachers too over the years, Grand Sheikh's Daria Bey. And she started a school years ago online to start bringing remedy to a lot of the injury that has been done to our children. Name her school, please.
Moorish School for Children. It's the online schooling for MoorishChildren.com.
Mm-hmm. Now, in response to the injuries done to the Moors, or what you would commonly be told to hide it, they'll just say indigenous people. That's a way so they don't have to, because that's a designation. Keep in mind, that's not a pedigree name. That's a social political designation. So rather than say the Moors or the Americans, the true Americans, they'll just say the indigenous people or Injuns. So for them to attack the Injuns, true people of the lands, they set up the General Education Board by John D. Rockefeller and Frederick T. Gates in 1902. And for those of you who are studied, this is particularly after they murdered Winona at Ashokamoxon territory, which you know today as Philadelphia. And people come from around the world to visit where they threw her off the rocks. They call it Lover's Leap. And then they have a statue of her assassination symbolically with a hybrid European holding a sword underneath a flag like this at the base of one of our mounds, which is where they have the art museum at Philadelphia. And you'll see that when you look from the air, the architecture of that whole layout to the battleground, which is now City Hall, which is designed like a mosque, you'll see architecturally, it's just like this. Absolutely is. Bordered by the Delaware River and the Schuylkill River. Absolutely. And at the base of those steps that you see in the movie Rocky Balboa runs up the steps, you'll see a statue called Eakins Oval. Ovary, oval. Ovary, oval. And that statue indicates or is symbolic of the assassination of Winona. And after that murder, assassination of Winona, and they'll have Tammany's statue at the base of Market Street going into the boulevard, etc., with Aquila on his shoulders, etc., just before you enter. And that's her husband. So they'll even symbolize the destruction of the Lenape of this area, Lenape Moors. They'll say Lenape. It's the Lenape. You roll the R because you're dealing with Berber, or what you call Berber linguistic group of Africa. There you go, Northwestern Mexim. Anyway, so let's read the philosophy of the founders of that General Education Board designed for the dumbed down to show you why this 8th grade test is higher than the average college student operating at North America. Graduate or university. This is public information available to all readers, including all you parents that keep saying that you love your children and that, we got to make it better for the children. Well, stop it. You just really stop it because you need to read yourselves. So John D. Rockefeller and Frederick T. Gates, and many of you are familiar with that foundation called Gates, who are also to this day trying to poison your children, sticking things in their arms in the name of helping them. Remember the Tuskegee experiments? Then look at the experiments that they're doing to you now and your children. Philosophy. The founders of the General Education Board, John D. Rockefeller and Frederick T. Gates, 1902. In our dreams, this is quote unquote, this is their philosophy, this is documented all over the world in all education systems, but they won't read it. In our dreams, we have limitless resources, and the people yield themselves with perfect docility to our molding hands. The present education conventions fade from their minds, and unhampered by tradition, we work our own goodwill upon a grateful and responsive rural folk. We shall not try to make these people or any of their children into philosophers or men of learning or men of science. We have not to raise up from among them authors, editors, poets, or men of letters. We shall not search for embryo great artists, painters, musicians, nor lawyers, doctors, preachers, politicians, statesmen, of whom we have an ample supply. The task we set before ourselves is a very simple as well as a very beautiful one: to train these people as we find them to a perfectly ideal life just where they are. So we will organize our children and teach them to do in a perfect way the things their fathers and mothers are doing in an imperfect way, in the homes, in the shops, and on the farm. General Education Board, Occasional Papers #1. General Education Board, New York, 1913, page 6. There you go. Common knowledge. They told you what they were going to do. So now you understand why many of you, after I read some of these basic questions that are given to 8th graders in 1895 and 1896 area. This is 1895 of the 8th grade. While most of the people are listening to this broadcast here, the House of Reawakening Minds, and those of you who've been connected to so-called education systems are in debt for educations that don't even equal 8th grade. And that's a fact. Many of you are in debt for life under what they call student loans for miseducation, and don't even know or haven't been made aware that you were actually being dumbed down and put into perpetual servitude with debt that most of you will never pay. Thus, the law does injury to no one. Know the law, know thyself, and go back to those principles of thy ancient mothers and fathers. That's the lesson. And we just gave this to give you a little bit of support and a little bit of encouragement to do so. And doing what we can to whatever humble degree we can here at the House of Reawakening Minds to aid you in that work while you aid us in helping to get this message across to the people of the land and the people of Midgard Earth in the great missionary work of helping to uplift fallen humanity.
You know, I remember when I was young and my parents invested, you know, the door-to-door salesman would come around with the World Book.
Yeah, Britannica.
We got one right up there that we found, like after, you know, going through the Goodwill or wherever we went. But we had the whole set. I mean, it was important. You know, they would buy books. You know what I mean? And I'm talking 60 years or so ago.
And it's interesting. It's more information in those old Britannicas than the people get in your basic education today. But that's another reason why they made them unpopular and start getting rid of them, because it's also the part of expurgatorius, you know, and people need to be aware of those things so that they can start taking responsibility and putting their effort into civic organizations to restore that which was lost. But thankfully, Shika's Daria Bay has established that online school to get past some of this corruption to help our children and those who are willing to participate in actually doing the work to help uplift fallen humanity and help our children. And I'm grateful to her. And she's very busy. And of course, she's been doing this for years. And so that's just for many of you who would ask, well, is there any place to go? And do they have any more schools? Sure, it's been there, you know, but again, because mainstream news does more to attack the truth or to suppress anybody who's trying to get good work done. They will misrepresent, make satirical statements, do trolling videos, etc., to suppress knowledge because they've been actually living off the people's birthright and off the people's estate under a platform of false government and fraudulent government and color of law and actually attacking the law. And thus, when people get injury, people keep thinking that the law is injuring them when the law does injury to no one. It is actually the lawless who have been pretending to be men of law who are actually the enemies of that which is enlightenment and erudition and are actually angels of the dark pretending to be angels of the light. And you really need to know that. And the battle at Midgard planet, this time in this cycle, in this Aquarian cycle, is the exposure of all of those frauds that have been governing Midgard for these last few centuries. And again, the knowledge is not new. However, just like Septuaginta in the Bible and the Quran says, Allah will reject those who reject knowledge. The people are destroyed by the day for lack of knowledge. And knowledge goes back to the ancient Sabi or Saba, Sabians, who are the Gnostics, those who hold the knowledge. Then you understand the Gnostic philosophies that are behind what you call Judaism, Christianity, and Islam, which all have the same root from those men of the hair like lamb's wool who carry the knowledge, known as the Gnostics. Now, so when people are looking at the ancient African philosophies, most of the time they're looking at some kind of religious ritual only, not knowing that these are actually symbols or what you call ritual demonstrations and symbolic demonstrations of the workings of nature. And being that humanity is a part of nature, the law is in place for you to construct your life and to have a point of reference. Therefore, the law does injury to no one.
Here's a question here, and they ask it twice, so I don't want it to slip right in. Curtis Ord, can Todd please explain the Parents Patrie Act and how to undo its legal ramifications through private administrative process, please?
This is where the hybrid Europeans operating under the guise of uplifting fallen humanity and the philosophy of Roman order and the members of the Circle Church and Chancery, known as members of the Roman Curia. This would be members of all your secret societies in your modern world, claiming to be your parent. Now, so the administrative processes, they will have many, and usually they will deal with what is known as commercial codes that have been made uniform since around 1986 to 1966 to 1968, when they blackmailed and intimidated the operative government of Texas, which was the last Republic area, in the process of the members of the Circle Church and Chancery overthrowing the Republic at North America, which is the missionary work of the Bar Association, etc., which is also why they don't teach the original Article Amendment 13, sometimes also known as the 1320, the original Article 13 with its 20 sections. Also why members of the bar, by law, were not to hold any office under the Republic order adopted from Muslim law of the Anansi Confederation of Moors at North America to do business under constitutional principles, which logically reaches back to all the treaties, etc. Now, so the administrative process, because they've been doing what you call human trafficking, the United States Corporation Company is actually a human trafficking platform pretended as legitimate government, particularly since 1861, with what is known as the Organic Act of Congress, 1861. So because they started, because their missionary work, operative administrative missionary work is human trafficking, and because humanity is designated as property, surety property, backing the U.S. corporation private alien, private debt, etc. All things are done in what they call a commercial trade operation. Therefore, the Uniform Commercial Trade or Uniform Commercial Codes, which been operative since 1966 to 1968, and the different administrative operations that were constructed for reclaiming the estate, which in many cases have been actually still misrepresented, to be honest with you, is what those administrative commercial processes are. And for those who study uniform commercial codes, many people have used them to get back to what you would call administrative position holder in due course of their lost estate, which is what that makes reference to. And so the parens patriae is where the hybrid Europeans cut out the feminine principle, which we talked about earlier. And this is even why
patriae is the masculine.
Yeah,
right?
yes. This is why you see all the popes of Rome um, um, are all males, number one, and only in general, until recent years, to pacify the people, they had any Asiatic African blood in it at all, because actually we have been their target under Unum Sanctum operations and the Spanish Inquisition. That's the Inquisition against Al-Andalusia, which we stated earlier. And this is also why you see their gentrification practices that are common, in particularly at North America, with its promotion or exportation around the world, and also with the constant wars against Asia and Africa perpetrated by the hybrid Europeans who've been perpetrating themselves as Americans and going around the world doing things in our name. Again, the promised position from them in their operations, recognizing that the people are becoming conscious or reawakening to their true pedigree, have been the Uniform Commercial Codes as an operative format to counter their parens patriae position of operations of government, claiming to be your parent, etc., and therefore putting the people into a wardship status. This is again for those of you who have gotten the flash drive from Dr. Naila from over the years. Do a look at Reversioner as an article to kind of get the concept of getting past some of the offers made by Rome as the people wake up. Because as you all notice, for those who've been doing research, many of the people who have perfected the Uniform Commercial Code processes, as promised by the Roman Curia members, as soon as they perfect them and try to execute a holder in due course processes, you see that they don't honor it. And this is again why it's important for people to nationalize and simply not stand as surety, because you can't, not by right, they will not allow the process of people actually capturing the straw man, because the straw or the man of straw is the foundation of the operations of the dark side of the priesthood, who have been actually running government on the planet as at large, not just the democracy platform at North America with the corrupted counterpart called the Republican Party, members of the Whiggamore parties, and particularly, and the interesting of the Kansas school test that we talked about. For those of you who are scholars, do a research on the Kansas-Nebraska Act.
I was going to ask you to talk about that.
Yeah, and so that's dealing with a lot of the area and the dynamics that are behind the split of the Whiggamore Party that has later come. Keep in mind, the Whiggamore Party is the hybrid Europeans practice in the UK and in the subdivisional colonial operations at the Maghreb or North America, a Mexim, pretending to be Moors. This is why when you're dealing with jurisprudence or the law, that they would wear the curly wigs, which they do even to this day and in the UK, imitating the Moors, because that's what it's all about. Now, so my position with this has been for Moors to go back to the principles of their mothers and fathers. For any position that's represented by the hybrid Romans for your redemption would always be a deception. And this is, again, for those of